Prince Harry believed the palace had already taken everything it could take from him. His military roles were gone, his royal duties had vanished, and the gates of his former life had slowly closed. But nothing prepared him for the order that arrived without warning. King Charles had authorized the complete and permanent removal of Harry's remaining royal titles. In a single decision, the monarch had not merely punished his son, he had formally separated him from the crown forever. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles sat alone before a sealed crimson folder, carrying his younger son's full royal designation. He read the final page twice. The royal order, a formal command issued under the authority of the crown, would strip Harry of the titles Duke of Sussex, Earl of Dumbarton, and Baron Kilkeel, along with his princely styling and every honorary distinction tied to palace life. The king removed his glasses and placed them beside the folder. He did not move at all. Years of interviews, private accusations, failed peace efforts had narrowed their relationship into guarded contact through lawyers. Harry no longer trusted palace promises. Charles no longer believed private talks would remain private. That was why this decision mattered beyond ceremony. A title carried rank, history, and a visible place within the monarchy. Removing every title meant erasing the last official proof that the estranged son still belonged inside that structure. The monarch reached for his pen, but his hand stopped above the signature line. He understood the truth. He was not only disciplining a royal figure, he was ordering the symbolic disappearance of his own child from official records, palace directories, and future royal announcements. The clause beneath his name made the action final and irreversible. No apology could restore what this signature destroyed. Hours later, Harry answered an early morning call in California, expecting security. The palace representative began reading from the decree, a binding decision taking effect across the royal household. His face tightened when the titles were listed. Then came the word that broke through his disbelief: forever. Harry asked whether his father had signed it. Silence held the line. Yes, the representative answered. He lowered the phone but remained seated. Anger had not arrived, only shock. Yet Charles had not reached this decision alone. Someone inside the family had placed evidence before him, and what it revealed turned hesitation into absolute resolve. To understand why a father crossed a line no reconciliation could easily undo, the story must return to those trapped on opposite sides of the crown. Behind the titles, ceremonies, and palace walls stood three men, bound by blood but divided by duty. Charles remained a father, carrying the wounds of a fractured family. Harry remained a son convinced that the institution had abandoned him. Between them stood William, the future king, forced to protect the monarchy while confronting the brother he once trusted completely. The royal order was legal in appearance, but its true weight was painfully personal. Charles had spent years trying to separate love from duty, but the line between them had almost disappeared. Every attempt to reach Harry had been followed by another painful controversy, another private accusation, or another demand palace advisors believed the crown could never accept. The monarchy was not simply a family business. It was an institution whose rules shaped public roles, royal authority, and the future succession. That made every private disagreement far more dangerous. The king moved slowly through a private corridor and stopped before an old photograph of William and Harry as boys. They were smiling, standing close, untouched by the bitterness that would later divide them. He lifted one hand and touched the edge of the frame. Then footsteps approached. The monarch pulled away at once, hiding the emotion before anyone could see it. Harry's shock had already begun turning into anger. Meghan watched him pace through the room in California, repeating that his father had allowed duty to erase their final personal connection. She asked him to sit, but he refused. The prince insisted that the decree was not protection. It was rejection written in royal language. Meghan heard the pain beneath his fury, and she knew the titles had represented more than rank. They were the last official link to his childhood, his mother, and the life he once believed could never be taken away. William carried a different burden. Catherine found him alone before a scheduled briefing, holding a page that contained the new official wording for Harry's identity. A royal briefing was a formal meeting, where senior family members received decisions and instructions affecting the monarchy. The princess noticed that her husband had read the same paragraph again and again, without turning the page. The future king had not originally demanded complete removal. He had supported a narrower restriction that would limit Harry's ceremonial position without destroying every title. But that changed after he learned of a private move involving George, Charlotte, and Louis. Catherine asked whether there was still another path. William answered that the matter was no longer about two wounded brothers. It was about protecting the children from being pulled into a battle they had never chosen. Camilla understood how long Charles had resisted. During a private dinner, the Queen Consort heard him admit that signing the order would feel like publicly confessing he had lost his son. She did not challenge him. She simply watched as he set down his glass and stared at the untouched place opposite him. Yet one confrontation had destroyed the final hope of compromise. It happened at Windsor, behind a closed door, when Harry placed a demand before the king involving the future roles of William's children. The prince left that meeting convinced his brother could never again be trusted near the machinery of the crown. That confrontation became the hidden point of no return, and every person involved would later remember the exact moment the room fell silent. The removal of Harry's titles did not begin with a speech, a newspaper headline, or a public scandal. It began behind a closed door at Windsor, during a meeting intended to prevent another family rupture. Charles entered hoping to establish boundaries. William arrived prepared to listen. Harry came determined to reclaim a formal role. But when one private demand involving George, Charlotte, and Louis was placed before the king, the discussion became the moment the family could never take back. Harry had requested a limited return to royal service, offering to represent the crown during selected international engagements while keeping his independent life abroad. Royal service meant carrying out official duties on behalf of the monarch, with every appearance reflecting directly on the institution. Charles agreed to hear the proposal because he still believed a controlled arrangement might reopen personal contact without reviving every wound. The king wanted boundaries. His younger son wanted recognition. The meeting changed when Harry demanded a written guarantee involving George, Charlotte, and Louis. He insisted that neither William nor palace officials should be allowed to exclude him from future ceremonial events connected to the children. He also argued that Archie and Lilibet deserved permanent recognition inside the royal structure. The request struck directly at the succession, the legal order deciding who inherits the throne, and how future royal roles are protected. William pushed his chair backward, slowly, deliberately. He asked whether the demand was truly about family unity or whether Harry wanted guaranteed access to the next generation of heirs. The future king's voice remained controlled, but anger burned beneath every word. Harry rose at once. He accused his brother of hiding behind the children and using them as a shield against reconciliation. William stood too, warning that George, Charlotte, and Louis would not become bargaining pieces in an adult conflict. The prince repeated the children's names, making clear that this boundary would not move. Charles ordered both sons to sit down. Neither obeyed. The monarch's voice grew quieter as he told Harry that affection could not be converted into constitutional leverage. Love might open a private door, he said, but it could not force the crown to surrender control over its future. Harry placed a prepared statement on the table. According to the documented account later given to the king's private secretary, he warned that he would make his position public if the palace refused to respond. Charles stared at the pages but would not touch them. The statement suggested Harry could challenge the legitimacy of palace restrictions and reveal private conversations about William's children. That threat changed everything. Harry left without shaking hands. The door closed hard behind him. William turned to his father and said the dispute had crossed from personal resentment into pressure against the succession itself. Charles remained seated, still staring at the untouched statement. Yet the king hesitated. Before any order was signed, William demanded one final private confrontation with his brother. The next time the brothers entered the same room, there would be no proposal on the table and no father capable of protecting them from what they were about to say. William did not summon Harry as an heir speaking to a distant relative. He summoned him as a brother, demanding one final answer. No aides were permitted inside. No recording secretary waited beyond the table. For several minutes, neither man spoke. Then William placed Harry's Windsor statement between them and asked whether he was truly prepared to damage the future of 3 children to regain a position he had voluntarily left. Harry's answer destroyed the final restraint between them. William had arrived first and removed every briefing note except the statement left at Windsor. A briefing note was an official paper summarizing decisions, risks, and instructions for senior royals. The future king wanted no legal language between them. He wanted his brother to face the words exactly as they had been written. Harry entered expecting compromise. Instead, the prince told him this was not a negotiation. It was his final chance to withdraw the threat involving the succession, the formal order deciding who inherits the throne, and the children whose lives would one day be shaped by it. William slid the statement across the table. Harry refused to touch it. "Did you write this to be heard?" the future king asked. "Or did you write it to frighten us?" Harry stared back. Fear is the only language this palace has ever respected. The silence broke. William accused his brother of turning private pain into public pressure whenever the family refused his demands. Harry answered that the institution had protected the heir while sacrificing the spare, then expected gratitude for the damage. The prince warned him not to hide behind old wounds. His younger brother replied that those wounds had names. Their mother's memory entered the argument first. Then came Charles's failures, Meghan's treatment, Catherine's privacy, and every childhood promise the brothers believed the other had betrayed. William defended his wife and children with rising fury. Harry defended his own family with the same force. Neither man stepped back. Harry stood and reached for the statement. William placed his palm over it. The page remained trapped between them as both pulled, until a sharp tear opened down the center. The sound stopped them. William released the paper and revealed the truth. Charles had already approved the framework for removing Harry's remaining royal titles. The framework was the prepared legal structure setting out exactly what would be taken away and how the decision would be enforced. Only the king's signature was missing. Harry's face hardened. He said that if his father signed, the monarchy would not be removing titles. It would be declaring war on its own blood. William looked at the torn page. "The war began when you brought the children into it." Harry left without another word. The future king remained behind, staring at the damage between them. When William reported the confrontation to Charles, the monarch faced the decision he had feared most. He would have to choose whether the crown belonged to his family or whether his family must now be sacrificed to protect it. With the brothers' final bond torn like the page between them, every eye turned toward the one man whose signature could make the separation permanent. For decades, Charles had prepared to defend the monarchy from political pressure, public anger, and constitutional uncertainty. He had never prepared to defend it from his own son. The final decision was not forced by a council, demanded by William, or written by distant officials. It belonged to the king alone. Yet as Charles sat with the removal order before him, the power of the crown felt less like authority and more like a blade. Charles had received separate warnings from constitutional advisors, his private secretary, and William. Each reached the same conclusion. Partial restrictions would leave Harry with enough royal standing to challenge palace boundaries again. Constitutional advisors were specialists who guided the monarch on the legal limits of royal authority. Their message was cold but clear. Half measures would only delay the next crisis. The king studied the removal instrument, the formal document that would carry his command into effect. It covered everything: titles, styles, honorary roles, ceremonial precedents, meaning the official order in which members of the family were recognized at royal events. It also removed website references, palace listings, and any future recognition tied to Harry's former position. Camilla entered after midnight and found Charles sitting in near darkness. A single lamp burned beside the unsigned order. The queen consort asked how long he had been there. He admitted he had stared at the first page for nearly an hour. The monarch spoke quietly. A king could survive criticism, he said. A father had to live with the knowledge that one signature might close the last road home for his child. Camilla moved closer but did not touch the document. She told him that delay would not restore Harry. It would only leave William, Catherine, and the children exposed to another cycle of pressure. Charles opened a second envelope. Inside lay Harry's prepared Windsor statement and a documented transcript of the brothers' final confrontation. He read the account line by line. The record confirmed that his younger son had refused to withdraw a single threat involving the succession. The king asked for one final telephone call. Harry answered. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Charles said the matter could still end without greater humiliation if his son accepted firm boundaries. Harry refused. He demanded a public acknowledgement that the palace had mistreated him before any discussion of titles could continue. The call collapsed quickly. Charles lowered the telephone and closed his eyes. Camilla watched him reach for a fountain pen that had once belonged to his mother. The monarch held it above the page, breathing slowly, then signed beneath the permanent removal clause. The choice was complete. Yet the pain was only beginning. Before the public could be informed, a sealed copy was sent across the Atlantic to Harry's household. The ink had barely dried when the decree reached California, carrying with it the full force of a father's rejection and a monarch's final command. The envelope did not arrive with ceremony. There were no trumpets, uniforms, or palace announcements. It was delivered quietly, placed on a table, and opened in a house thousands of miles from the throne. Yet inside was a decision powerful enough to erase the identity Harry had carried since birth. When he reached the sentence declaring the removal permanent, he did not shout. He simply stopped reading, as though the words had severed something language could no longer explain. Harry's legal representative had received the official decree shortly before the palace announcement and sent the sealed copy directly to him. The decree was a formal command carrying the king's authority, and it named the exact hour when every title, royal style, honorary association, and official privilege would end. His household was also ordered to remove royal wording from letters, charitable material, public introductions, websites, and future appearances. This mattered because the change would not remain hidden inside palace files. It would follow him into every public part of his life. Harry read alone, while Meghan waited in the next room. He moved slowly through the pages until he reached Charles's signature. Then, he pressed his thumb against his father's name, closed the folder, and remained completely still. Meghan entered when the silence became unbearable. She asked whether there was an appeal. Harry looked at her and answered that the word "forever" appeared 3 times. Charles had not left a narrow path back. The king had made sure no future apology, change of heart, or private agreement could restore what had been removed. Anger came next. Harry said his father had chosen an institution over his son. Meghan told him the decree proved they had to stop seeking approval from the family that had rejected them. She understood his rage, but she also feared what he might do with it. Their advisors quickly delivered another warning. A separate enforcement schedule, meaning a list of penalties attached to the order, could trigger financial, security, and confidentiality consequences if Harry attacked the palace publicly or disclosed protected conversations. The news became real before he had finished processing it. Palace staff had already begun removing his formal designation from internal records. Harry opened an official royal web page and refreshed the screen. His titled profile disappeared. For the first time, the loss was visible. No legal language softened it. No advisor could explain it away. The prince he had been was gone from the institution that had named him. Harry began drafting an angry statement. Every sentence carried years of resentment. Meghan watched as he prepared to release it. Then the telephone rang. Charles was calling privately. No advisors, no officials, no William. With retaliation only one button away, father and son were given one final conversation, in which neither the palace nor the public could speak for them. For the first time in years, Charles did not call as king, and Harry did not answer as duke. There were no secretaries introducing them, no written conditions, and no advisors measuring every sentence. There was only a father who had signed away his son's royal identity, and a son deciding whether anger was all he had left. What passed between them could not reverse the decree, but it changed the meaning of the silence between them. Charles made the call from a private sitting room after dismissing every member of staff. He removed the briefing papers from the table and ordered that no official record be created. A briefing paper was a formal document used to prepare the monarch for important conversations. But the king wanted no prepared language between them now. He wanted Harry to hear a father's voice, not another palace statement. Harry answered while holding the public response he was ready to release. Meghan saw the name on the screen and understood what the call meant. She touched his shoulder, then left the room so the conversation could continue without interruption. He kept the statement in one hand and the telephone in the other. Charles spoke first. "I know what I have taken from you." Harry's answer came without hesitation. "You have taken the last proof that I belong to you." The words struck harder than anger. The king refused to apologize for protecting William's children or for defending the succession. Yet he admitted that the decision had caused him a grief no constitutional advisor could have prepared him to carry. Constitutional advisors were the experts who guided the crown through questions of royal power and legal duty. None of them could explain how a father was supposed to survive this. Harry told Charles the titles had never been simple decorations. They connected him to his mother, his childhood, his military service, and the younger man who once believed his place in the family could never disappear. The prince said the decree had not only removed rank, it had cut through memory. Charles listened without interruption. Then he said the order removed Harry from the working structure of the monarchy, but not from the family in his heart. The words did not bring forgiveness. They did not erase the signature. But Harry's anger lost its immediate force. The monarch then revealed something hidden from the final document. He had rejected a harsher proposal that would have changed the standing of Archie and Lilibet as well. Charles had insisted that the children would not be punished for a conflict created by adults. Harry looked down at the statement in his hand. Slowly, he folded it in half and placed it inside a drawer. He chose silence. The private war had paused. But outside that room, millions were about to witness the moment the Duke of Sussex vanished from the royal record. At exactly 9 o'clock, the palace released a statement unlike any announcement the modern monarchy had issued before. Within minutes, broadcasters abandoned scheduled programs, newspaper presses were restarted, and crowds began gathering outside royal gates. The decision was no longer a private wound between Charles and Harry. It had become a national verdict on loyalty, duty, family, and the price of defying the crown. One image captured the moment more powerfully than every argument that followed. Buckingham Palace confirmed that Harry's royal titles and styles had been permanently removed by order of the king. Effective immediately, and without any route to restoration. A royal style was the formal way a member of the family was addressed and recognized in official life. Palace officials began changing public records at once, while senior royals were instructed to use Harry's personal name in future formal communications. The change mattered because it turned a private family rupture into an official reality the entire institution had to obey. A crowd formed outside Buckingham Palace, beneath a giant television screen, carrying the breaking announcement. People spoke over one another until the broadcaster reached the words, "Permanent removal." Then the noise stopped. The silence lasted only seconds, but it captured the shock of a country watching a prince disappear from the royal structure in real time. The next morning, one newspaper carried an empty ceremonial chair across its front page. Above it stood the words, "The Prince Who Is No More." The image spread across television panels and social media, becoming the symbol of a decision that felt both historic and painfully personal. Harry's supporters condemned the order as a father's cruelty disguised as discipline. Charles's defenders argued that the monarch had finally protected the crown from private disputes being turned into public weapons. Neither side spoke only about law. They spoke about family, betrayal, and the point at which forgiveness becomes dangerous. William watched the coverage beside Catherine. When Harry's formal title vanished from the lower third caption, the princess reached for her husband's hand. The future king did not celebrate. He stared at the screen, knowing the monarchy had gained control while he had lost the last public link to his brother. Newsrooms waited for retaliation. Palace officials prepared to enforce the decree's confidentiality provisions, the rules preventing protected royal conversations from being disclosed. Harry answered differently. In a brief written message released under his personal name, he acknowledged the decision, declared his devotion to Archie and Lilibet, and refused to attack Charles or William. The silence stunned those expecting war. That restraint changed the meaning of the crisis. When the noise finally faded, the crown remained secure, but the family standing beneath it had been permanently transformed. The removal of Harry's titles ended more than a royal dispute. It closed the final chapter of a life divided between inheritance and escape. Charles had preserved the authority of the crown, but he had done so by formally releasing his son from it. William had protected the future of his children, but lost the last illusion that the brothers might return to what they once were. And Harry, stripped of every royal distinction, faced the identity that remained when nothing inherited could define him. Harry's removal remained permanent. He was no longer recognized as a prince, duke, earl, baron, royal highness, honorary military figure, or official representative of the monarchy. A royal highness was a formal style, marking senior status within the family, and its loss confirmed that no ceremonial language could soften the separation. The decree was not paused, revised, or hidden behind a future promise. It stood exactly as Charles had signed it. Charles refused to create a secret road toward restoration. The king understood that a monarch's command had to carry weight, even when the personal cost followed him long after the public debate had ended. Several days later, he opened the official family directory and saw that Harry's royal designation had disappeared. The monarch closed the book gently. He did not turn away. Harry faced the same truth in California. He placed the decree inside a locked cabinet, but did not destroy it. Meghan watched him hold the key for several seconds before setting it down. Then he walked outside to join Archie and Lilibet, accepting that his future had to be built around the family standing beside him, not the institution that had rejected him. William carried no sense of victory. The future king knew that protecting the succession, the legal order through which the crown passes to the next monarch, had demanded the permanent loss of his brother as a royal partner. Catherine heard him admit this during a private recorded conversation between them. He felt neither triumph nor regret, only the heavy certainty that the boundary had become necessary. Charles carried two truths at once. He had preserved the crown, but he had failed to preserve the unity of his sons. The king no longer pretended that duty could erase grief, or that authority could repair what love had lost. Harry's silence became the final revelation. By refusing to turn the decree into another public war, he made his first decision completely free from royal identity. The palace could remove his titles, but it could not dictate the man he chose to become. The monarchy emerged stronger, safer, and more controlled. It also emerged colder. Charles placed Harry's old photograph inside his private desk and closed the drawer. The title was gone. The son was not forgotten, but the door to royal return was closed forever. And with the king's order sealed, Harry's royal life ended, not in uncertainty, but in a final and irreversible truth. The crown had released him, the family had changed, and neither would ever return to what they had been.